Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to the Andrew Parker Show. Another episode. We're in the 400s somewhere. I don't know. Check it out. Go to YouTube, subscribe, follow. Go to the AndrewParkerShow.com. You'll get all of the info. You don't want to miss a beat. We've had some great shows of late, but today is very special. Once again, a returning guest to the Victory Hour, now the Andrew Parker Show. Brian McClung, one-time Chief of Staff for Governor Tim Pawlenty, did everything press for Pawlenty in those great years for the state of Minnesota. Since then, I can't say it. I can't say that. And prior to that, I don't really think we could say it. But those were 8 great years. And we welcome Brian McClung to the Andrew Parker Show. Brian, good to see you again.
Hey, great to be here, Andy. It's always a pleasure. And you have the best and most lively show online.
Yeah, there you go.
Great longevity, more than 400 episodes. I've been with you at the state fair as well.
Yep.
So it's really a pleasure to be back.
So, you're a historian of sorts, and I love to kind of set the context for the discussion by looking back. And if you take a look, I started to look at governors in the state of Minnesota dating back to 1971. Wendy Anderson was governor of the great state of Minnesota. And between 71 and 79, we had Wendy Anderson and Rudy Perpich.
Right, because of course, the shuffle, the great shuffle that led to the Minnesota Massacre.
Wait, it's going to be me. I'm the guy.
Yeah, I think, Wendy Anderson did a lot of great things. He played on the USA Olympic hockey team.
Yes.
He held the fish up on the cover of
Time magazine.
But the thing he did that was best for Republicans was appointing himself to the U.S. Senate.
Yes, that's right.
So that, right, and I think a lot of Democrats have learned that's probably not a good strategy. I mean, it led to him then losing re-election to the U.S. Senate, and Rudy Perpich, his lieutenant governor, become governor, losing. And
to Al Quie.
Right, to Al Quie. And so, that's when we had a Republican.
And Al Quie, also a guest on the Victory Hour, now Andrew Parker Show, 79 to 83. Al Quie was governor of the state of Minnesota. And that was quite a change from Rudy Perpich to Al Quie.
Right. Well, and then you had Al Quie choose not to run for re-election, right? You had an economic downturn. They were dealing with difficult inflation right then in the beginning of the Reagan years.
And Rudy comes back.
And then Rudy finds his way back in, right? And so Rudy is that Iron Range dentist who's ready to go, right? He's right there. He's ready to go. And he comes back. And then he's there.
All right, tell me this. What are your thoughts on that? By the way, my dad was very good friends with Rudy Perpich. Loved Rudy Perpich. 83 to 91, Rudy Perpich is in office. How do you compare Rudy Perpich to Tim Walz? Because they're both goofy.
So a lot of people, the first governor goofy was Rudy Perpich in Minnesota, right? And so this is because, Rudy Perpich was trying to do everything he could to get jobs back to the place that he loved on the Iron Range, right? So anything. But one of the things he proposed was a chopstick factory, right? like, can you give us better material? This is like late night comedian dream. Like, oh yeah, we're going to fix the economic crisis with the chopstick factory. Let's go, Rudy. So I think that with Rudy, people kind of,
let's hear it for Rudy.
He had sort of but he had a heart for public service, and I think people kind of gave him a little bit of leeway. Of course, Rudy was a guy who then recruited Mikhail Gorbachev to come visit Minnesota.
Yes.
Right? And that was a big
deal.
He came here. So Rudy was a big ideas guy. I mean, the Mall of America, the idea for, remember when it was the Mega Mall?
Yeah, the Mega Mall.
A Rudy Perpich was thing. Like he was talking about this. He was out there. So
he had big
he
ideas.
was an ideas guy.
He was a visionary type in that sort of small town way.
But then he went for that elusive third term. He went for that elusive third term.
And it already was a third term.
That's true, because he had served part of that.
Yeah, he would have been 4 terms ultimately. Right. So that didn't work, and we got another form of crazy, Arnie Carlson.
Well, so I worked for Arnie Carlson. I was a young communication staffer. I know it looks like I'm probably in my early 30s. So
you do.
Child labor, but I worked in the communications office for Governor Arnie Carlson near the end of his second term. And Arnie would tell me the story about, of course, he got into the race after the John Grunseth swimming pool scandal. That's a whole nother episode to itself, right? And so, Arnie, ran, lost in the Republican primary. Grunseth is the nominee. Grunseth drops out with like
craters
2 or 3 weeks ago. Arnie had started his campaign again as a write-in candidate before that. So, and it was, Arnie Carlson and Jonelle Deerstead, and you had to spell their name right or it wouldn't count on the ballot if you're doing a write-in. So they're running ads like cut this piece of paper out and take it to the voting booth, all of that. And Arnie told me then he would go around the state, and Grunseth was just imploding, right? The whole pool scandal, all that stuff. And Arnie would get up and he'd say, I get up and I give these speeches and I'd say, it's time to just talk about the issues. And people were like, yeah. He's like, and then we wouldn't talk about issues at all. We just And so Arnie, won that election in 1990 on, about a 2 or 3 week campaign, because it was fresh and he was there. And here's the thing, Arnie's a cranky guy, right? Like he's not a fun and friendly guy, but you didn't have to see him for very long in that campaign, right? Like he came back out of nowhere, and Grunseth dropped out. The Republicans agreed to put him on the ballot. The Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that they could do that. It went to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Rudy Perpich never spoke to Sandy Keith again, who was a justice on the Supreme Court, because of that decision. And I mean, they kind of made up the law, really, right? There was no real clear
I remember the decision.
For what to do, and they go in and say, like, all right, well, he was second in the primary, so I guess he can be the replacement candidate. And Arnie sails to this victory. So really, that I think is, we have a potential, governor right now who might run for a third term, and we can talk about that. But we can't really draw too many parallels, because that Perpich running for a third term was so topsy-turvy with the Grunseth out, Arnie Carlson at the last minute.
It was a crazy time. And it's when many of us were coming of age in politics. So it was an interesting time. But think about this. Rudy Perpich for 8 years, Arnie Carlson for 8 years, kind of both quirky, gadfly, political. So 8 years, and then Jesse Ventura for 4 years, all leading up to Tim Pawlenty. So, I mean, those years leading up to stability and common sense, adults coming back into the room.
Well, I think all of those guys would tell us they were adults.
Oh, well, of course they would.
They were, stable geniuses as well. But
Jesse, 4 years.
The Jesse thing really was fascinating. And you got to think about the timing of when Jesse Ventura gets elected in 1998, right? So the Cold War is over, right? America is the only superpower. The economy is strong. It's pre-dot-com bubble crashing, right? It's pre 9/11. It is, you almost have to have that exact moment in time where voters feel so satisfied, so comfortable, so like, you know what, we could put the wrestler in charge. Like, everything is going so great. Like, we'll be fine. Let's just, you know what, it'd be kind of fun.
We'll be able to add additional monster truck events at the X.
He can, he's going to come in, he's going to referee the WWE, right? We're going to have like celebrities,
BOA for everybody.
So I said, I worked for Arnie Carlson. So I worked for Arnie Carlson on the last day Arnie Carlson was governor, on the day when Jesse Ventura was inaugurated. So I was there that day. So I worked up until 12 noon on that Monday when Ventura is being inaugurated. So I was a smoker at the time, so I went out to have a heater for my last morning in the governor's office. And I used to go underneath the Capitol steps. There was a driveway. It's not like this, the way the Capitol's renovated now. You can't drive up right in front of the state Capitol. You used to be able to drive underneath
I remember
the Capitol
that.
steps.
Yep.
And so those are the doors outside of room 15 on the basement level of the Capitol. So I was out there underneath. It's January. I'm, having a cigarette, and a limousine pulls up underneath the steps of the Capitol because Ventura is going to get sworn in like an hour. And the door opens, and Arnold Schwarzenegger gets out of the limousine. And I'm standing there like smoking, and I'm like, "Hey, nice to see you, Mr. Schwarzenegger." He's like, "It's good to be here." Like, goes upstairs. He was in the rotunda for Ventura's swearing.
He and Jesse, that was the new group.
I stood in that room since I was doing communications for Arnie when Arnie did the press conference, kind of the turning it over to Jesse Ventura. And it's just so wild too, right? Because, you had kind of like this curmudgeonly, Minnesota, Arnie Carlson will always wear his University of Minnesota cardigan,
right?
Like, this kind of guy, and like this big, imposing, bald guy, gruff, just like never knew what was going to come out of his mouth, right? So that transition,
well, it prepared us in Minnesota for Donald Trump in certain ways,
right?
Having had Jesse back in those years, but then we get the 8 years of Tim Pawlenty, and since then it's been Crazyville. But those 8 years were, I don't know, I just think they were great.
High watermark, Andy. Clearly high watermark, right? And you look back, so the budget deal that the legislature is coming to terms with Governor Walz right now is going to actually be a cut in the state budget. It's going to be the first time that they've actually reduced the state budget in real terms since Tim Pawlenty was governor, right? And so we actually held the line. The overall annual rate of spending growth in the Pawlenty years was just a little bit over 1%, right? We were really, we had difficult fiscal years. The first term was, in the aftermath of 9/11 and the economic deals we're dealing with there. And at the end of his second term was the post-2008 financial collapse.
Right.
So we had some tough economic times. 3 out of the 4 budgets in the Pawlenty years, we had to deal with deficits. And so we were holding the line. And what it did was it allowed the economy in Minnesota to grow. It allowed businesses to grow. They had certainty that we weren't going to raise taxes. We weren't going to come in and make their jobs harder. And so people were willing to invest and stay because they knew that was Tim Pawlenty's philosophy. And I think what you're seeing now is after 8 years of Mark Dayton, and now we're at, about 6 years plus of Tim Walz, like they're looking at it and saying, that's not what we have anymore. We have no certainty on what state government is going to do with policy changes like paid family leave, on the minimum wage, on, regulations, on taxes. It's hard to know and invest. And so I think that's what Governor Pawlenty was very focused on. You can't have state government grow faster than people's personal paychecks or businesses. It's unsustainable for government to grow faster. The budget that the Democrats passed, 2 years ago when they had the trifecta, 40% increase over the previous budget. 40% increase.
It's Crazyville.
So it's that, right? Like it's
unlock the door and let the inmates out.
It's hard to go. So
no, I'll tell you the last 16 years, almost 16. It will be at the end of Walz's second term. The Democrats have controlled the state of Minnesota. For a longer period of time, they've controlled the state of California. We don't want to become the state of California. Obviously, they're very unique in their size out on the West Bank, West Coast out there. But it's the difficulty that liberal fiscal policies have for each and every one of us. It's the end of the story. I was close, still am, with Mark Dayton, and was invited a few times to the governor's mansion for breakfast. It was just 3 or 4 of us, Governor Dayton, one of his aides, and me and my partner. And we're both Republicans, or conservatives at least. He knows we don't agree with him on hardly anything. But we became good friends around the policy issue of Israel when he was in the U.S. Senate. And so he very graciously invited us a number of times, and we would talk policy, domestic fiscal policy. And there were a few times where I respectfully couldn't help but laugh.
Yes.
And I said, "Are you serious? You think that is going to actually be good for the people it's intended to be good for? Because it isn't."
No. And Mark Dayton lived in a bubble, right? Like he was fortunate to be born in the family he was born in, and he didn't really have to go out and figure out how to put together a small business and work these things out, right? So I think his concept, and the interesting thing about Mark Dayton, though, is like, I think he really believed those things, right? He's not like,
he does.
He's not playing a game.
Yeah.
He's not like,
and I respect
a
that.
lot of these Democrats in Congress and wherever, who are just sort of doing this for show. Like, I think he really believes it, but it's like, well, no,
that's not the way it's going to work. When you throw trillions of dollars into the economy, there's going to be severe inflation. And, we can argue about demand side, supply side, and argue about conservative and liberal fiscal policy. But, that is a liberal policy that turns the economy upside down. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you a business owner? Are you losing sleep because you feel your partner isn't carrying their weight, or because you no longer share the same vision or values? Are you no longer comfortable going into your own office? Are you walking on eggshells in the company you built? This is Chris Daniels, founding partner of Parker Daniels Keyboard LLC, a premier litigation law firm headquartered in downtown Minneapolis. For more than 30 years, I've specialized in business litigation and have helped hundreds of business owners resolve troubling business disputes. As a former certified public accountant, I get to the heart of the dispute, including financial issues. Business divorce can be messy, time-consuming, and costly, but doing nothing can cost you a lot more. Not just money, but emotionally, physically, and in your personal life. If you and your business partner no longer see eye to eye, and you're eager to take a proactive approach and make a change, please call me at 612-355-4100 and schedule a consultation. Or visit our website at www.parkerdk.com.
Looking to grow your wealth with exclusive opportunities? At True North Private Investments, they focus on alternative investments designed for forward-thinking individuals just like you. Explore private equity, private real estate, and private credit opportunities that go beyond traditional markets. And it doesn't stop there. Their experts craft unique tax strategies to help maximize your returns and minimize your federal and state tax liabilities. Your future deserves innovation. Your portfolio deserves True North. Call them today at 619-455-0275 or visit investtruenorth.com to get started. Let's talk about the Minnesota legislature. Let's talk about what's going on today. First, start with when they had the trifecta. What did they do, and what are they doing today? Is it better? Are we in a better spot?
Oh, it is significantly better, right?
Yeah.
It is significantly better.
So you voters out there, remember,
right?
You at least have to bring the conservatives even.
Yeah, at least getting to a 67-67 tie in the Minnesota House has fundamentally altered what's happening in St. Paul. I mean, the previous 2 years, the Democrats didn't even invite the Republicans to the conversation. I mean, there was no talk of trying to work things out or bring Republicans or bring any Republican ideas into the budget discussions at all. And now you have a recognition that you can't get anything done unless you have Republican buy-in. And I really credit Speaker Lisa Demuth for really managing the Republican caucus well and playing their hand well so they're in those conversations and making sure that they're helping shape what's happening. And Senate Republican leader Mark Johnson as well is really in a strong position right now because the Democrats in the Senate are not going to have the votes, even though they are the majority in the Senate, 34-33.
Yeah,
they are not going to have the votes to pass the budget agreement that that the House and Senate and governor have come up with.
Which votes are peeling off?
The progressives. And so there's a progressive.
The loonies in Minneapolis.
I mean, there's loonies everywhere in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but the ones in Minneapolis are uniquely loony.
And so you've got now, a situation where you think about last year during session, Senator Fateh from South Minneapolis held up the entire legislative session last year because he wanted his way on the ride-sharing bill, the bill that was going to affect how Lyft and Uber riders or drivers are paid in Minnesota. And he shut down that whole session. They're like, where did he go? We can't vote. What's happening? What's going on? But and he got his way. He got the bill the way he wanted it to, and he negotiated it that way. Now, every progressive has learned their lesson. So yesterday, when the governor and the Democratic leaders, Aaron Murphy in the Senate, Melissa Hortman in the House, and Speaker Lisa Damuth were having the press conference to announce and outline their budget target agreements, the progressive Democrats were outside banging on the doors of the governor's reception room and chanting as they're trying to have this press conference. Like, never seen anything like this. We had protesters once or twice when I was working for Governor Pawlenty, when we're in there in the reception room, and so it happens.
Well, what about Trump's State of the Union, where they're holding up signs live?
Right? Like, they're
pounding on the door. I like the sound effects.
And I'm like, I think they're coming in with the drums. Like, and they're pounding on the doors.
But you thought it was protesters.
And I'm like, oh, there's protesters. And then we get video from the reporters who are out there. It's 20 Democratic House members and a handful of Democratic senators. So the people that that elected the leaders that are saying we have this deal are like, we don't have a deal. We're not going to accept that.
No Minnesota nice here.
Right. So instead of it being, one senator like it was last session saying like, I got to do it this way and I'm going to hold it up. What happens? They learn the lesson, right? You rewarded that behavior. And so now they're going to do this again. So it'll be interesting to see, as we speak, they were working on wrapping up conference committee reports for several of the smaller budget areas. So agriculture and veterans and, workforce and higher education.
Do you think we're going to get a decent bill out of there?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to conclude some of the areas that are easier to agree to and that have smaller dollar amounts, right? So get those done because the session deadline is this upcoming Monday at midnight. So to conclude in the regular session, that's it. Now, everybody has recognized and understands that there will be a special session to get some of this done.
Sure.
The question is, can you get some pieces completed now? So that's off the table. And then get to the big ones, get to health and human services, education, taxes, and a bonding bill in a special session.
Well, it's going to be interesting. You're listening to the Andrew Parker Show with our special guest, Brian McClung, one-time chief of staff, Tim Pawlenty, did everything press for Pawlenty. Also, Arnie Carlson toward the end of his second term. But now, founder and chief principal of McClung PR. He knows of what he speaks at the state capitol because he lives there, he sleeps there, and his wife wonders where the heck is he.
Right. She's seen it for many, many years, right? It's like, here we go, end of session.
Another session.
Right?
Yeah. All right. So we've got a couple of open seats here in the state of Minnesota that really could have profound national impact, at least in terms of the U.S. Senate, potentially, and will certainly have significant impact here in the state of Minnesota with the governor's race right on its tail. It appears to me that the Republicans, like the Democrats at the national level, the Republicans in the state of Minnesota have been leaderless, rudderless for some time. Really, I think since Tim Pawlenty, no one has really stood out. Tom Emmer, to some extent, and he's doing a great job in the House of Representatives as one of the three most powerful representatives in the entire House of Representatives. He is doing a fantastic job. One reason why he probably won't come back to Minnesota to run the state here. If he did, it would be fantastic, and I think he could win. But I don't think he will. So what are the Republicans to do?
Yeah, nobody has emerged yet. And I think in part that's because some of the most likely candidates are legislators, and they don't want to kind of have that cross current of beginning their campaign for governor or U.S. Senate while they're in the middle of this kind of messy end of a
Are there any
legislative
good
session.
Republican legislators over there?
Yeah, I mean, a couple come to mind for me. One is Representative Kristen Robbins.
Mhm.
So Kristen Robbins has been involved in Republican issues, and particularly in school choice and education issues for many years.
Out of Minnetrista and
Yeah, kind of
somewhat.
like Plymouth to Mound to Minnetrista, out
Yeah.
in that kind of northwest suburbs.
Yeah, who the hell would live out there? Way out west there. I mean, my God.
So, so Kristen is the chair right now of the House committee looking into fraud and kind of diving into that and making some recommendations on what we can do to, do better. I mean, we've had enormous amounts of fraud in Minnesota over
Hundreds
the
of
last,
millions.
decade. It's really, Minnesotans ought to be embarrassed because there's fraud broadly, but this type of fraud is worse in Minnesota really than anywhere else. I mean, that feeding our future.
And I think we have only touched the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
So we got to dig. I don't know that Keith Ellison is digging. Don't quote me on it, but I don't know that he's really digging.
Right. So, so Representative Robbins has this committee and she's doing that. I think she's very smart. So I think she's somebody that people talked about. Senator Julia Coleman, who's a state senator from the kind of Chanhassen, Chaska area. She is a great leader and spokesperson. I mean, she knows how to deliver a message, I think, almost better than any other Republican we have at the Capitol. Of course, she's the daughter-in-law of former U.S. Senator Norm Coleman.
Yes.
So maybe he'd help out on the fundraising.
We're going to have Norm Coleman on the Andrew Parker show soon.
So there are a couple of people in the legislature. I think Lisa Demuth is another one. I think she has really shown that she's a talented and hardworking person during this session. Likewise, very on message, doing a really good job with that. So I think she's somebody to look at.
I see a pattern here.
So there's a few, they're women.
What is the Y chromosome?
Well, and let's be realistic.
Or is it the X? I missed class that day.
You're no doctor.
Okay.
So, if you think about, I mean, we were, before the show, we were talking about what's the difference between now and when Republicans were winning some of these statewide races, right? When we had U.S. Senator Dave Durnberger, U.S. Senator Rudy Bosch, with Governor Carlson, Governor Pawlenty, et cetera. Well, one of the major issues is that Democrats have been beating us in the suburbs, and in particular, even in those second and third ring suburbs where Republicans used to do really well. And a big part of that is that we've been losing to independent or swing voter women, married women in those suburbs. And so I do think that if we had a strong female candidate, I think that's helpful. Those three in the legislature, Michelle Tafoya, who's a broadcaster and kind of, does a podcast. She's been talked about as a candidate. So
Scott Jensen still is interested, it appears.
My thing is, like, if you've run and lost, like, maybe the voters sent you the message and tell me what's different this time, right? Tell me how you make the case that it's different.
Did you tell Tim Pawlenty that when he got back into?
I said, I love you, man. I'll help out however you want.
Yeah, that was a bit. I don't know. I didn't like that. Unfortunately, I didn't like the campaign. I was fully supportive of Tim.
Yeah, it was tough timing too. That's the conversation that we had back then. But so I do think that you look at those differences. More than 50% of the population of Minnesota lives in the 7-county metro area, and so Republicans, we're doing well in we're doing better in greater Minnesota than we ever have been before. We've consolidated. We have essentially almost defeated all of the Democratic legislators in greater Minnesota, but there are not enough votes in those districts statewide for us to win. We have to find a way to do better in those suburban and, outer suburban to exurban.
It's really the third, in large part, the third congressional district that is so important. And the second, good point.
Paulson and John Klein, right?
Yeah.
Those were both Republican congressional districts.
Yes.
So and they were winning those by winning those outer areas strongly. They might, as you got closer to the city, maybe they'd lose those precincts, those areas.
Let's talk about the second congressional district. Angie Craig is now running for U.S. Senate. I think she will be a formidable candidate. She may not get the Democratic nomination. I think she probably will, but she may not, which may pose a problem for her. But she gives up the second congressional district seat where she was a tough candidate, a tough incumbent then to beat. And we had, some pretty good challengers. What do you think when it's an open seat?
Again, yeah, I think we'll get some new and interesting candidates to run as an open seat down there. That's a district that leans slightly Democratic, right? It's probably a D +4, +5, but that's winnable. Like,
Boy, it was
Republican
always
win,
R,
right?
it was about an R+4
Yes,
years ago. Back with
yes, exactly. Before this last
Fine.
redistricting in part too, right? And so now it has all of Dakota County in it, which is bluer, goes all the way up to West St. Paul and some of those areas, South St. Paul. But I do think, so people like Senator Eric Pratt might be a candidate in CD2. He's a good, hardworking, mainstream Republican. He might be an interesting guy. I think some of the, previous Republicans who have run down there are thinking about it as well. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I thought Kistner was going to run.
Yeah, I think Kistner's talking about it again. I think Tyler Rahm, who won the Republican Party endorsement last time, but then dropped out for a job with the Trump campaign. I think he might be thinking about it as well. So, yeah, I think, there'll probably be 4 or 5 pretty strong candidates down there. Democrats looked like they might have a messy primary, but so far it's just there's 2. State Senator Matt Klein, who's from Mendota Heights. He's a doctor at the Mayo Clinic. And then you have former Lakeville mayor and former state senator Matt Little down kind of in the southern suburbs, who's running right now too. So I think that that is back to being a true swing seat, right? When Angie Craig was running in it the last couple of times, we kind of acted like it might be a swing district, but with her there, it just was not.
No.
I mean, Angie Craig works extremely hard.
Yes.
She has done a particularly good job of working in the kind of rural areas of the second congressional district, agriculture, all that. And I think that's what is setting her up for a strong run for the U.S. Senate. The second congressional district.
The other thing that is setting her up for that is she's going to be coming on the Andrew Parker show soon. And she has been on the show as much as anyone. And it, I think it's launched and catapulted her political career.
I think she probably would give you most of the credit. Also, Angie and I knew each other when she was at St. Jude Medical. She served on the board of the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce, and I was on the St. Paul Chamber board at the same time. And so she and I had breakfast at the Downtowner Woodfire Grill years ago when she was thinking about maybe getting into politics, or she was interested, just wanted to get my thoughts from my time.
Wow, good advice.
So, right? We ran into each other at issue with Tom Hauser 2 weeks ago. She's like, remember when we had breakfast? I'm like, and look at where you are now. Look, right?
It's good advice. What can you say? You're listening to the Andrew Parker Show with our special guest, Brian McClung, founder and chief principal of McClung PR. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at McClung PR. What's going on at the Capitol? What are you working on?
We're growing. It's fantastic. Visit us, mcclungpr.com. Check us out and see if we can help you. Yeah, we do mostly public relations in the advocacy space. And so our clients are largely trying to get good things done or stop bad things from happening. There's always a little bit of each. But yeah, we're working with the Minnesota Ambulance Association on some of their key priorities. Obviously,
that's got to be interesting.
You call 911, you kind of want an ambulance to show up. So we help tell their story. We work with the Center for Rural Policy.
Well, the Democrats don't need police to show up because they're defunding the police. If you call 911, you wait a little while. The guy with the gun is, he'll
Don't worry so much. Don't worry. We're doing Center for Rural Policy and Development. We're doing some work with some companies that are developing data centers in Minnesota. That's a whole conversation that, you could do a whole show on what's going on, kind of with understanding data.
That's huge and important.
They're like, I don't like data centers. I'm like, well, do you use your phone?
Yeah.
Because how do you think where this information goes? Do you have health insurance? Do you shop at Amazon? Right? All of these things need the ability to be computed and dealt with. So we're working on some of those issues. We're working to try to stop the social media tax. The legislature has proposed the first in the United States tax on social media. So we're trying to rally some small businesses to stop that.
I like that idea.
The tax.
I'm a supporter of tax on social media. I'm telling you that right now.
The taxes that run on the Andrew Parker show.
That's right.
Come back directly from
They
you.
will. They will. I got to do a whole show on the tax on social media. Oh God.
Lost Parker.
All
right.
right. So there you are, all of our listeners.
All kinds of fun stuff. But yeah, we have some fun clients too. I mean, Mall of America is one of our clients. Radisson Blue at the Mall of America, which is a beautiful hotel right next to it. Republican Party has had their election night events there for a few years. So just a good variety of stuff that we're working on.
Fantastic. McClung PR, Principal Brian McClung on the Andrew Parker Show. Go to theandrewparkershow.com. Sign up, subscribe, follow us. Also, jot down the phone number, 952-522-2818, and you can text us. Text us questions. No question is stupid. I might call it stupid, but that's okay. You stand by what you're asking and what you're probably answering with your question. And we'll read them on the show, and we'll answer them fully. And as you know, this is the great debate. I'll give positions from the left as well as the right. Remember, at least half of my life, I was a liberal Democrat. So who the heck knows? I've evolved, maybe, but I still know how to speak liberal talk. We're gonna be We're going to have another episode of the Andrew Parker Show coming up. As I said, Norm Coleman is coming up as a guest. Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, has agreed to come back on the show after the last visit he had with us was a month before his initial election as the mayor of Minneapolis. He was the only of the 7 candidates for mayor at the time, one who came on the victory hour, and he won. I view that as a 1-to-1 correlation. You come on, good things happen. Thank you for joining us. Be kind to your neighbor. For more Smart Plain Talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard and True North Private Investments. Mark Twain once quipped, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. When you are lied about and it spreads, the resulting mayhem and destruction can be, and often is, disastrous." Hi, this is Andrew Parker, co-founder of the Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm. I recently handled a high-profile defamation lawsuit on behalf of a luxury home real estate agent whose business was decimated by falsehoods spread about him. After nearly 2 years of litigation and 2 weeks of trial, the jury came back with a verdict of more than $2 million for our client. Parker Daniels Keyboard. We litigate cases, we try cases, and we win cases. With a record of excellence in achieving extraordinary results, Parker Daniels Keyboard lawyers have consistently won huge verdicts for its clients in the areas of defamation, civil rights violations, regulatory battles, and intellectual property theft. For wise counsel and winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, premier law firm in downtown Minneapolis. Are you a high-income earner or a business owner looking to secure your financial future? At True North Private Investments, they focus on helping you break free from the limitations of traditional investments. Diversify your portfolio with private equity, real estate, and credit opportunities built to thrive in any market condition. Plus, their tailored tax strategies are designed to help you keep more of what you've earned. Your success deserves a smarter approach. Choose True North to grow, protect, and optimize your wealth. Call them today at 619-455-0275 or visit investtruenorth.com.